I want to welcome you. Thank you for joining us on our journey where we're just leaning into the heart of the Father and just receiving His love and growing at what it means to be His son or daughter, and just embracing being a disciple and producing fruit out of that. And so can't think of anybody better to have with me than my good friend Steve. And we've been looking at what it means to be a disciple and to make disciples. I want to dive into that a little bit further today. Steve, just where would you like to take us? Because I know that you have embraced both of those things of being a disciple of Jesus and making disciples.
Yeah, I'm pretty simple in the way I approach life. And I believe this is an idea, a concept that was imparted to me from Oren Paris, who was actually very much a spiritual father, a mentor to me for many years. And it's what he called, and I think he called it, that's been a long time, but I call it the basic elements of discipleship. And it's, first it's what, why, how to, or what, why, how. And the what, of course, would be the information or the knowledge. You know, what is a disciple? What do disciples do? What does the Scripture teach? It's just the information about following Jesus, the what. And when you think about beginning as a disciple, we start by faith and we continue by faith, right?
Yes.
We believe. And I like what Dallas Willard said when people want to talk about believing or having faith. He said to believe is to act as if it is so. So it's not just giving mental assent to an idea, but it's actually doing it because you think, oh, that's so. Therefore, I'm going to live it. I'm going to do it. And that's biblical faith. And you'll see how that fits into these three pieces here. I know you already see that, but the what would be the information. And that's often the first step, of course. It's like, okay, who is Jesus? You know, well, He's the Son of God, etc. What is the information? There's a great truth and information and knowledge that we need to be a part of our foundation to become and also to grow as a disciple. So we start with the what. But we want to move on from just the what, not be satisfied just to collect more information, which is a temptation, I think, for all of us.
I think it's a temptation on both sides because it's the easiest part to gather information and then to pass information along. It's a whole nother thing to embrace and understand the why behind the what and then to actually live it out.
Yeah. And so you think about, some says, like, Jesus says, pray. And you think, okay, that's what? And then you think, well, why? Boy, the more we understand about why pray, one of the best books I ever read about prayer, read a few books about prayer by Pastor Bob Wilhite, and the title of his book was Why Pray? And that's one of those things when you read something like that, you go, man, I want to get engaged with the what. I want to get engaged with the pray now that I see why. So when we go deeper and say, what is it that's behind this what or this information? And we can't always come up with that. But it's a great question for us to ask as disciples. If we're disciples, we're learners, so we're asking good questions. And one is why. And if we get some answers, then we get some understanding. And if we begin to see the why behind the what, then it often increases our motivation to actually do the what.
Yeah, and I think that's huge because all of us have probably faced the temptation of just saying just because on the why. And sure, there are times when, even in following Jesus, when He asks us to do something and He gives us, here's what I need you to do, that we need to say yes and go for it. But I'm so grateful that He loves us enough to give us the time, and not just the time, give us Himself again, as we've talked about. He imparts, He wants relationship with us, and so He gives us Himself to give us confidence that we can ask those questions of why. That on those rare occasions He says, "Yep, just move with me now because of the timing." But most of the time He's more than willing to take the time and answer questions of why when they're asked from a sincere heart.
Yeah.
Not from that heart of why don't you, but from that heart of why. I want to lean in and learn more.
Yeah. So it's easy to collect the what, as you said. It's a little more challenging to collect or gain the why. But if we gain the why, it'll increase our motivation to engage with the what. We have to be careful. We don't want to collect the why so that we just have a more sophisticated collection of what. So I've got some whys behind my what. But that motivation comes now. I really want to do the what. So the next is how do you do it, or how? So a lot of people can say, man, I'm thrilled about this what. I understand why, and I want to do it, but I still don't know how.
And that's so huge, and I think it's important that, especially in our day and age, we embrace the concept of apprenticeship, I'm going to say, in the modeling, because that requires us to flesh it out, learn from others, and the how-to. And as we talked about, being a disciple and making disciples, for me, it's that key place of forming that takes place. It's almost that transformational, reformational. It's that work. It's the workbench. It's the workbench of discipleship, where I have to get in and get my hands dirty and learn the how-to and be confident enough in the how-to in my own life that I can actually impart it to others.
Yeah, yeah. So if you go back, and the what would be the knowledge, the why would be the understanding, and the how would be wisdom. Sometimes we think of wisdom as being something, well, it sounded wise to me. I don't think I understood it, but it sounded really wise. But actually, wisdom is how things work. How does this work? How do you do this? So yeah, you're right. And if we don't make it, if we're not going to grow as a disciple, if we don't go all the way through the what, the why, and the how, start practicing. So it's the learning by doing. Just using prayers as an example. Sometimes people are saying, I want to learn how to pray. So you can read, there's tremendous books on prayer. And read them. But eventually, you're going to have to pray. And so sometimes when I'm discussing prayer, for example, with someone, I say the best way to learn how to pray is to pray. And probably it's to pray with others. Just throw yourself into it, pray with others who are praying, and that's how you're going to learn to pray, by praying. So it doesn't mean we've gained some understanding along the way as to what it even is, but we have to eventually do it.
And so help me and help others to jump in, because I'm by nature actually a hesitant person. When I do something, I want to do it right. But I've learned that that's actually a hindrance to the learning process.
Sure.
I've got to get past my fear of failure, my fear of rejection, whatever those things are, those hindrances are, because I just got to jump in and trust that it's going to be okay.
Yeah, well, not implying anything here, Bob, but for all of us, we've got to be comfortable with, can you show me how to do this? We've got to be comfortable with, I don't know how to do this. I want to do it. I don't know how. How do you pray? How do you forgive? How do you obey Jesus? How do you study the Word? Whatever it is. I don't know. And that, just embracing that and being open about it.
And as you said, I even think of the reality of just admitting. It starts with just admitting that either I don't know how, or maybe I do, but I have a lot of room to improve. And just being willing to admit that and go from there.
And that's a sweet place to live. I mean, we don't like it.
I understand.
Our pride says all the pride alarms are going off. Don't say that. Don't say that. But that's where life is. We humble ourselves and say, "Can you help me? I'm not sure I understand how to do this. I want to learn more." And that's critical, because the gap between ignorance and knowledge can sometimes look big. Like you're starting a 4-year degree at a college or something, like, oh man, it's going to be 4 long years. But actually the gap between ignorance and knowledge is pretty small compared to the gap between knowing something and doing something. And that gap can actually, in reality, can be larger. But the thing that shrinks that gap is that attitude that says, I don't know how to do this. Can you show me how? Or can you point me to somebody who can?
So you would say that'd be a real key first step in shrinking that gap, of just admitting, hey, I can't do this, or I don't know how, help me in the journey. And on that admission, what else would you suggest that we do to shrink that gap even further? What would be another practical steps that we could walk in?
Yeah, I think I'm sort of going off what you said a minute ago, like we all want to do it right the first time.
Yeah.
We just got to let go of that in our practice and say, who knows what this is going to look like or even sound like. I'm just going to jump in. Your first time off the diving board or whatever it is, it's like, I know I'll get wet. I don't know if they'll call it a dive or not, but here we go. And so I think that's true even with following Jesus. And if we can, again, we keep talking about this thing of connecting with other disciples because there's safety. If we can find people who genuinely love us, who care about us, we're walking together, then there's safety. There's plenty of space to mess up in the learning process.
That's great. Thanks, Steve, for sharing with us today. And once again, I want to encourage you to, even as Steve challenged me afresh, to close that gap. And even as he said there at the end of finding somebody else. I think of how many times it's come down to somebody like Steve just saying jump, and I've just had to jump in and trust God in the process. So God bless you, and we'll talk again soon.